As you begin the project, after you've logged in to the RMU computer system using Citrix, you'll have to open up SPSS and the corresponding data file. From the Start menu, go to All Programs, IBM SPSS Statistics, and IBM SPSS Statistics 19. After SPSS opens, you'll have to open the data file, which is saved in two places. It's saved in the Blackboard shell under Course Assignments, and it's also saved on an RMU network drive that you have access to when you're logged into Citrix. Since we want to open an existing data source, I'm going to hit OK and find the data file. In locating the data file, I want to go to the Passouts on Moon Server drive, which is also called the Q drive. In the Q drive, I'm going to look for the folder called Hansen. The folders are in alphabetical order, so you'll have to scroll over until you see the Hansen folder and our course EDUC 6065. The data file is Computer Project 1 Data 2011.sav. You will only be able to open the file when you are in the package SPSS. When the data file opens, you should already be familiar with the two screens in SPSS, the Data View and the Variable View screen. The Data View contains all of the data which has already been entered, and the Variable View screen has the variable definitions. You should note that there are 14 questions labeled Q1 to Q14, as well as an ID field in the data file. For Computer Project 1, Part 1, you are asked to provide labels and value labels for each of the variables. Looking at setting up the SPSS file for Computer Project 1, Part 1 again asks us to set up the file providing question labels and response option labels in SPSS. Number 1 says, provide labels for the 4 demographic variables, survey items 1 through 4. Looking at the survey, I see that survey item 1 is labeled, what is your gender? In the SPSS data file, I will want to label Q1 with the question name, what is your gender? Once I label the variable, when I see output, it will be labeled with this label here, what is your gender? Looking back at the survey file, I see that the second question is, what is your age? Correspondingly, I want to label question 2 in the SPSS file, what is your age? I will do the same thing for question 3 and question 4. Looking at the the survey form, I see what is your race is question 3. In SPSS, I want to label question 3 with what is your race? And finally, the last question asks about whether the student is an international or U.S. citizen. Looking back at the direction file, I can see that I've taken care of number 1, providing labels for the 4 demographic variables. Question 2 asks me to provide labels for survey items 5 and 6. Therefore, I will look at survey item 5, which reads, The virtual advising process informed me of the necessary course requirements for scheduling classes. I am going to label question 5 in my SPSS file with that label. Question 6, through virtual advising, I received accurate information about the academic policies and registration procedures, will also be labeled. What you should note is that questions 7 through 14 have already been labeled for you. Normally, when you set up a data file, you will have to provide a label for all of the variables in your file. Again, questions 7 through 14 have already been labeled for you. Step 3 of Part 1 of the computer project asks you to provide value labels for the 5 demographic variables. Looking at the demographic variables, the first is gender. What we see is gender has been coded a 1 for females and a 2 for males. So I want to provide that information to SPSS. When I look at gender, I want to click on the values box and a little blue box appears. When I label the values, I'm going to use 1 and add the female label, and 2 and add the male label. Similarly, I'm going to add those labels for the next set of variables, age, race, and student type, based on the codes of 1 is 17 years or younger for age, 2 is 18 to 20 years for age, or 3 is 21 years or older for age. Again, label the variables age, race, and whether they're an international student or U.S. citizen in the same manner. In order to complete step 4 of part 1, we want to provide value labels for the remaining survey items. The response codes for questions 5 through 13 are all the same, with 1 being strongly disagree and 4 being strongly agree. So in my SPSS file, I'm going to start at question 5 and label a value of 1 with strongly disagree, a value 2, disagree, 3, agree, and 4, strongly agree. Each time I enter the value in the label, I want to click on Add. Once I do that for one question, I'm able to take advantage of a copy-paste feature that SPSS allows. So since I know that the response options for questions 5 through 13 are all the same, I'm going to copy the response options from question 5 and paste them all the way down through question 13, the same way that you would copy and paste from any Windows-based package. For question 14, the response options are different. In question 14, they range from 1 equals extremely dissatisfied to 4 equals extremely satisfied. So going back to SPSS, clicking in the labels column and then clicking on the little button, I will label 1, extremely dissatisfied, 2, dissatisfied, 3, satisfied, and 4, extremely satisfied. Upon completion of labeling the values, you will want to save the SPSS data file. The way you do that is similar to how you save files in any Windows-based package. We'll do File and Save As. And in this case, I am going to save the file to my computer desktop. And I'm going to keep the file labeled Computer Project 1 Data 2011.sav. The location where you choose to save your file is optional. One drive that you should see on your computer is your username drive labeled the H drive. Mine is called Hansen because that is my RMU username. If you choose, you can save the file to that drive. You will not be able to save the file to the same location on the Passouts drive. You do not have write access to that drive, so you will have to save the file once you modify it to a separate location. Again, I'm going to choose the desktop to save my file. Once I've labeled the values in the data file, I can put the cursor up by questions 5, 4, 3. Leaving the mouse up there will show me the variable name as I've labeled it in my SPSS file. The next thing that I want to do is part 2. In part 2, I'm asked to obtain frequency distributions for the demographic variables, frequency distributions for items 5 through 14, and descriptive statistics, including the mean and standard deviation for question 5 and 14. Additionally, for one question, question 14, I'm asked to obtain frequencies and descriptive statistics separately for males and females. After you've labeled the SPSS file completely, you're able to obtain the SPSS output. First, we want to obtain frequency distributions for the demographic variables. When I look back at SPSS in the variable view, I see that all of my variables have been labeled and all of the values have been labeled appropriately for each variable. Now I'm ready to do the analysis. To get frequency distributions, I want to say Analyze Descriptive Statistics Frequencies and choose the 4 demographic variables. I can do this by highlighting one at a time or highlighting multiple variables at once. I will ask for bar charts for each of these variables where frequencies is on the vertical axis, because I may want to see a visual of each of these distributions. After moving the variables over, I'm going to click on OK and the output will appear. For the second step, I'm asked to obtain frequency distributions for questions 5 through 14. So I'll do Analyze Descriptive Statistics and Frequencies. Now I could put all of the variables over there at once, or I could do them in the order as they're asked for on the sheet, where I take questions 5 through 14 and move them over. What I will see in my frequency distribution tables are the frequency and the percent, as well as the valid percent of data. The percent and the valid percent will be exactly the same as long as there is no missing data. When there is missing data for an item, the valid percent will be different. Now I'm asked to obtain descriptive statistics for items 5 through 14, including the mean and standard deviation. I would not be asked for descriptive statistics for questions 1 through 4 because they are demographic items on the nominal scale. Therefore, computing a mean and standard deviation would not make sense. Questions 5 through 14 are on an ordinal scale, and for ordinal level variables, we have the option of computing frequencies in each category or the mean and standard deviation. There are a few ways I could get descriptive statistics for these items in SPSS. I will illustrate here, Analyze Descriptive Statistics and Descriptives. I will choose items 5 through 14 and move them over and click on OK. Using the menu bar on the left side of the screen, I'm able to navigate from one section of SPSS output to the other. For the descriptive statistics, I can see that for each of these items, I'm provided with the minimum, the maximum, the mean, and the standard deviation. The final piece of output I'm asked for is related to question 14, whether the frequencies and descriptive statistics for males and females are different. When I generate that output, there are a couple of ways that I could do it. One of the ways is under the Data menu, choose Split File. When I split file, I'm going to compare the groups based on gender. So I want to move the variable gender over to the groups based on area. Note that I had to select Compare Groups in order for this option to be available. When I click on OK, nothing new happens to my data file. No new output is generated, but I did just inform SPSS that the next analysis that I do will be split based on gender. So what I'm going to do is for question 14, so I need to move all the other items back over, get information for males and females separately. When I click on OK, what I see is that I have this new output generated where I can see how overall the females and the males reported their satisfaction with virtual and online advising. What I want to do for the project is compare those percentages to see if there's a difference. The bar charts are also provided. Additionally, I can compute descriptive statistics for that same item. So I'm going to move all the items back over. So that I have question 14, the overall rating. And notice I can get the mean and standard deviation for males and females separately. After obtaining frequency distributions for items 1 through 14, descriptive statistics for items 5 through 14, and frequencies and descriptive statistics separately for males and females for question 14, I'm ready to rate the analysis. The directions for part 3, the summary report, are provided.